Hello everyone, this is Jesse Gallarzo bringing you the final installment of the Python Learning Workshop. Now, in the last couple videos, we went ahead and took several different concepts regarding the Python language and applied it to the script that was provided to go ahead and give a working text-based version of the popular game Tic-Tac-Toe. Now, as far as our code is concerned, we're pretty much done. We don't really need to fill in anything else. All I really want to do is go over some concepts that we didn't really have a chance to fully go over throughout the workshop. Now, throughout the workshop, you might have heard me use the word function to go ahead and describe these little areas right here. And so essentially what a function is, it's just a piece of code. It's just a piece of code that is separate from the overall script. When we were working in the first couple videos using the untitled Python script, we noticed that everything kind of went from a linear fashion. The code started reading from everything up top and just kind of started going down. But with the tic-tac-toe, if anyone noticed, that didn't necessarily work out that way. Although game rules was the first thing to print out, the game rules function, the only reason why that printed out was because we called that function over here in the main function. I'll go ahead and explain a little bit more of that in a minute. So whenever we create functions, we're not there. This piece of code is not going to get executed until the function itself is called. So right here at def, the keyword, we defined what the game rules function was, and then in our main function, we went ahead and called the function game rules. And at the very bottom, we see the main function get called. So we start right here at the very bottom with main. Here's main. And here are the different functions within main. And then they get called individually. So for starters, we'd start off with game rules, which would be right here. Go back down to main. We have the while loop here. And so far as the conditions for the while loop are in place, these three functions are going to continue to run, which are the print grid, and then place move, and then game winner functions. So we're going to go ahead and go back up here. Earlier I talked about the global keyword, and I didn't talk too much about it. Now, whenever one creates variables like we did at the very top, normally you can access them through all the different functions, but we can't actually edit the information that are outside of the scope of that particular function. So for example, right here on this for loop, we have the variable I. Now, this variable only exists within the place move function, so therefore its scope is only limited by this particular function. If I were to go ahead and try and call it in a different function, it's either not going to work, or maybe in the game winner function where I is already defined, it's going to call this one, but it's not going to call this one. Now, for the three variables here on top, since they exist outside of the individual functions, their scope is not limited to just these functions. They can be used within any function, but in order for us to edit them, they need the global keyword. And scope is kind of an important topic that, again, I kind of skipped over just for brevity's sake. But pretty much the scope is indicated by all the indentations that we've done. So, for example, right here, this one's pretty easy. The game rules function, the only thing that's under the indentation of it is just this print statement right here. So once we go ahead and move to print grid, since it's no longer under the same indentation, is not in the same scope of this function. And that's pretty much how everything here works. As the same thing goes for the for loops. So the for loops are in the scope of the place move function, and this piece of code right here, the if statement, is in the range, or I'm sorry, is in the scope of these for loops right here. It's not necessarily important that you understand how this works for the sake of the script. Obviously, we were able to get the script running, but once we're done with this workshop, it's probably important that you can go ahead and understand what scope is and what scope does to your script, because as you will see when you start running your own applications, it's very important to define what that scope is. Now, I'm going to just go ahead and give one quick outline of what we did. These three variables right here, game grid is the three-dimensional list that we created using for loops inside of the inner list and the outer list. We were able to create a 3x3 grid as shown right here. We have the game over variable that has the Boolean value of false that we see down here, and so long as that value is false, this loop is going to keep continuing to execute these functions and will continue to do so until the condition is met. So the game rules function was pretty easy. It just prints out the rules of the game. We only need to execute that code once, so it exists outside of the loop. The print grid function, which when we first started, it was just a series of print statements, but as we started understanding a little bit more of how the list data structure works, we're able to call the individual values within the three-dimensional list and putting out each individual value that exists within that grid. The place move function does exactly what the function says it does. It places a move somewhere within our grid. The game winner function uses a series of loops to check either horizontally or vertically if the three spaces occupying next to each other match, whether that being three of a kind in a row or three of a kind in the column. And then the overall main function that brings all of these things together to go ahead and execute our piece of code. And then the print function, the print statement right here indicating that the game is over. Now, a couple things here that I did not include within the script. If we go to game winner, it includes how to find winners for three of a kind in a row and in columns, but anyone who's played tic-tac-toe before knows that there's also a win condition that is diagonally. So any moves that are made diagonally, being like for example X being on 1, 5, and 9, would also indicate a winner, but we did not indicate those rules right here. Then also, if we run the code, I'll go ahead and show you guys right here. I'm going to go ahead and run the script. So we're just going to put X. Sorry about that. Put X, 1, O, 2, X3, X5, X7, X9. Alright, so now we're going to go to the O's. O4, O6, O8. And as we can see, the grid has already been filled up, but it's still being asked for user input. So we never technically defined a condition as far as what would happen if this grid is full. It just kind of keeps going and it turns into the infinite loop that we talked about in the earlier videos. The reason that I left these things out on purpose, because for the most part I went ahead and walked all you through to how to write the script. What I'm trying to encourage you to do now that the workshop is over is for you to go ahead and address these issues yourself, because I feel that you can't really fully grasp the fundamentals of programming until you go out and you do it on your own outside of supervision. So this is where we're going to start going into uncharted territory. I want you to take the script that we went ahead and wrote together, go out and improve on its design, fix what isn't working on it, make it run the way that you would like for this game to run. And with that being said, that is the end of our workshop. Now, before I go ahead and sign off on here, I want to go ahead and share a quote from Socrates. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. The reason that I chose this quote to relate to all of you is because I feel that with programming, this rings the truest. There's always gonna be something for you to learn out there. Despite my years of experience, I still feel like I'm a novice in many aspects of writing code, and so I make it my mission to go out there and try and learn and see what else I can learn. And that just tends to be the nature of programming in general, regardless if it's Python or any other languages. It's always changing. Things are always being updated. So you're always being prompted to learn something new. So this is why I find so much passion in doing this. I'm always learning something. And I'm hoping that by the end of this workshop, I've instilled some of that passion into you to go out and seek this knowledge on your own. Again, thank you so much for having me here. I hope that you've learned a lot and you can take what I've learned and apply it to any applications that you build in the future. Thank you all for your time.